Welcome to D-Spec, and thank you all for signing on. Also, just as a side note, if you could pop into the chat how you heard about the forum for this year, whether you saw it on a LinkedIn post or you got it in your GISA newsletter. It's not called a GISA newsletter, is it, George? It's called something else.
Yeah, email from GISA.
Yeah, that'll be really useful, just kind of to know where things are useful. George, could you go to the next slide, please?
Okay.
So, in the spirit of reconciliation, GISA would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea and community. We pay our respects to elders past, present and future, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. Thank you. And so for those who don't know us, I am Kelly and this is George. And that's our LinkedIn profile should you wish to follow us or connect with us on LinkedIn. We also have Natalie here from Venues to Events who supports us to run this event. And George, did you say you had someone in your office today as well?
I have Zayu in my office. He's intern. Zayu, if you can just pop your camera on for a moment, that would be great. Yes. So Zayu started with us last year and he has now completed a master's in data science. So he's part of the Brains Trust of GISA.
Brains Trust. Welcome, Zayu.
Yes.
So we have a little bit of housekeeping. If you want to go to the next slide, George.
I can do that for you, Kelly.
So for those who need professional learning points for this, generally it's our surveyors. You can get an FPET point from Surveyors Registration Board Victoria, and from WA Surveyors Board you get one general education point, and we haven't heard back from GCA members, but generally they give us a point as well. We do ask.
It's actually it's 1 point per hour. So
yeah.
What will happen is you'll get 1.5 points.
There you go. We invite you to keep your cameras on because it just makes George feel like he's being listened to, and it's really nice to see everyone, and it helps with that connection with people as well. If you're dialing in on your phone and you need to take a call or hang up, just put us on hold. Don't put us on hold because we'll get your hold music. So just hang up and come back. That's the easiest way. We have live Q&A. Not necessarily in the Q&A box, just go into the chat and put your question in anytime you like, or take yourself off mute and interrupt George. We love good questions and we encourage you to do so. So please, if you don't want to interrupt, just put in the chat and I'll interrupt him and we can ask those questions. And as you've seen, we do some live polls as we go through the presentation. So there'll be a couple more polls before we end the entire thing. So if you could please keep an eye out for that and answer those polls, because it just helps us make a better event for everyone. So over to you, George.
Thanks for that, Kelly. Just a little bit more about professional learning. Often organisations will ask you for proof of attendance. So we're happy to give you a certificate of attendance. So please just email us through through our website, and we can provide that. And this is one that went out last week to Mayank for participating in the B-Spec session. And you can take that to your professional association. Right, and that's all I had to say. The other person I wanted to introduce was Shane Sewell, who will be at our Fireside today. And no, there there won't be a picture of a fireplace or anything like that, but you'll see, you'll be hearing from Shane shortly. Okay, so today will be for people who haven't been to our forums before. Typically what we talk about is what are the things that have occurred in the previous year since our last forum. So we've been running these forums now for 6 years for online, and prior to that we would run them face to face, and so we've probably been going close to 10 years for running these forums, but we've had much broader participation for obvious reasons, being online. So we'll talk about some of the FAQs that we receive. We don't always get an opportunity to distribute those. So we'll talk about some of the key ones that we'd like you to know about. The community experience is where we'll talk to Shane and, excuse me, about his experiences and what he can share about his involvement with the A-SPEC community. The tech tips, the tricks and traps.
Nick Clark.
Oh, Nick Clark, someone's Siri is firing up. And the tech tips come about from some of the conversations during the presentation. As Kelly mentioned, don't hesitate to put your digital hand up, put your physical hand up. Kelly is monitoring the chat and the people that have their digital hands up so that we can refer to them, and we'll address it. Thank you very much for JP putting a fire in the chat, and then we'll talk about what's next. Kelly, could you send the link to this forum to Andre Makika, please? Okay, so what have we been doing? So, you know, there's obviously a number of activities that we undertake, and it's a constant. It's part of the continuous improvement aspect. So we receive input from what I call the new kids on the block, who are the novices just becoming exposed to the A-SPEC environment, as well as people more experienced, such as John and Shane and many others who are on here, who I won't name you all, but thank you very much for those contributions. Very important. And it doesn't extend just to surveyors. It's also, we get a lot of contribution from the software vendors, companies like OpenSpatial and OneSpatial, LizTech, other vendors who have other products for surveying, for the surveying community and the like. And it's really important that whatever we provide really works for them. So the way that we categorize the anomalies, and I call them anomalies because we never get things to be 100% complete. So we know that there are some things that we miss out on, and that's where the feedback comes in. So there are two categories: minor and not impactful to delivery, and things that are important and impactful to delivery. So something minor might be a typo. We may have an example in one of our tables, but the example doesn't actually sit in a code list. So we've been tidying all of those scenarios up. Things like important and impactful. There's nothing in D-Spec that has been important and impactful to delivery that has been omitted. But the kind of things that we look at is have we missed off indicating a code list as to be referenced as part of an attribute, or have we missed an attribute? That's happened in a couple of instances in the other specs, and if you attend the other specs, you'll get to see that. We've updated the sample data. We will make that available post these forums. And so we're taking out, again, some of the ambiguities in the sample data to make it easier for people. And the sample data, again, for people who are not familiar with it, it's a set of data that you can download once you have a login, and it has all of the data structure already set up and an example of what to put in there, whether it's a point, a line, or a polygon. So essentially, you could download that data, delete everything that's in there. You'll have the framework for all of the attributes and their structure there, and then you can put your data in there. And really important that you save it to the projection that you need it to be in. Updating codes and code lists is a constant thing, and it comes about from features. And I'll talk more about codes and code lists. We've been talking about our code list API for some time now, and the mobile app. Unfortunately, it's been offline for some time because we changed platforms, and we've had to reconfigure the API. So as soon as that is available, we will let you know. In the meantime, I've been playing with AI, and not that I'm a coder at all, and this is what I love about this particular tool that I've used, Claude AI. I've basically gone in there and developed a prototype of an application, which I will show you shortly. And then once I developed the prototype, it basically wrote all the HTML code, and then I gave that to Zayu to complete so that we had the end-to-end product that we want. And we're now in the process of having it posted onto our website so that people can access it as long as they have a login to the A-SPEC website. Zayu, do we have I think it's on our website at the moment, isn't it, for us to test? Is that what Symfony 3 indicated to us yesterday?
Yeah, but we still don't have the login feature right now, I think. Yeah.
Okay. So once the login feature is available, we'll test it, and we'll let you know so you can access it and tell us what you think. Ongoing advocacy on data governance and the benefits. As you know, we always talk about data governance, and not just from the data side of it, but also from the process side of it. And we'll talk a little bit about that during this session, and we talk about that in every forum. So I've created, I got high tech, Kelly. I created a video showing how this code list dashboard would work. So I made a mistake by not clicking the sound. So I'm just going to stop sharing for a moment and then reshare so that I can click the sound. Oh, didn't happen.
I think last time you shared the sound, it was fine.
Yeah, because I included sound in share content. So let me see, I may have to, okay. It's Well, Kelly, looks like we're both having some technical issues here. I will just bear with me for a sec, folks. Okay, I think I've got it now. Here we go. Okay, so I'm going to start this video. Feel free to let me know. There'll be about a 3 or 4 second delay before the volume starts, but let me know as soon as you can hear it. The purpose of this clip is to give you a snapshot into what we're looking at for crowdsourcing the creation of codes. As you know, C
George's sound's just gone.
I know, I just noticed. Let me see what's going on. Comment. Oh, is one of the valid entries. We want to remove it. In doing that, we also want to give the community an opportunity to create the codes when they need them. So this is how it would work. You search for a code list. I've selected my code list. I'm looking at all of the different options that are available. And I can't find it. So I'm going to search something in there. Vegetable plantings. Vegetable plantings doesn't exist. By selecting this, it automatically reads the description and at the same time gives me a couple of options. I'm going to pick one of them, and it's based on this criteria highlighted below. I pick one of them. I put in my username or user ID, and this is so that we can have an indication of where the activity is coming from. And we add a code to a code list. We continue. I now have the option to add more. I'm going to select make more changes. I go back to the start. I'm going to search for a different code, access point material. I'm looking through my access point material to see what is there, and I'm going to reinforced concrete, and by typing that in, I can see all of the options that I've got for reinforced concrete. I know that RC already exists, so I'm going to select RC1. This automatically adds it to the code list. I now see all of the changes. Satisfied with that, I send an email notification to GISA. GISA receives an email with these changes. I send the email. The session's complete. Okay, so a couple of things that I want to point out from that. We talked about making C comment redundant. So after showing this last week at the B-Spec forum, we had a conversation with a couple of mature users of A-SPEC, and there's a couple of things that we identified, or they identified, that could probably hold things up from them. If we're going to remove C comment as an option, then we've got to have a mechanism in place that pretty much updates things automatically. So whilst we state that we want to remove C comment as an option, we're actually going to keep it in there. And this tool will be able to be utilized to create the code. So essentially what will happen is that as a user of the tool, you identify the code. In the attribute field, you put C comment. In the comments field, you put the new code. And that will provide the end user with the ability to upload a code rather than having to worry about going through the whole process. So basically, we're looking at crowdsourcing the codes. We'll still ratify them. If there's a particular issue that we identify after we get notified, we will notify the creator of the code and the potential end user of that code to let them know. But that's what we've been addressing at the moment around crowdsourcing codes. We don't want us to be the hold up of you not being able to put in a submission by either waiting for us to create a code or waiting for us to include the codes in any validation routines that you may be using. So C comment stays for the short to medium term, and the code is included in the comments field. Okay. Are there any comments around that, or anybody has anything to say about that? Feel free to put it into the chat, and we'll cover it off during the remainder of the presentation. So in my preparation for this session, I reviewed the video of last year's forum. So I thought we'd spend just a little bit of time recapping on the conversation. So there was a series of questions fielded by Gissa. And so I thought I'd start with swale versus table drain. So what I know that this was covered off, and it was really good. Gabby and Kim brought out people from the participants to talk about their experiences. So I wanted to give you what defines a typical swale versus a typical table drain from our perspective. In our view, typically a swale occurs in urban areas and is part of the drainage network, whereas a table drain is often in rural areas and not part of the drainage network. It's really that simple. With regard to miscellaneous text, there's been a lot of conversation about, do we create a layer? Don't we create a layer? What we advocate for is that if you want to provide some miscellaneous text, then create a cartographic layer that only has text placed on it relevant to the feature, and it's supplied along with the A-SPEC data. It will probably not pass if you put it through any of your validation routines that you currently have, whether you're using AC/DC or you're using GDV Hub or your own inbuilt ones. So just be mindful that it's a supplementary element, supplementary layer to be provided. What we've seen when we've used miscellaneous text, we often see people put it in there for the size, material of features, levels and features. Now, a lot of those are actually stored as attributes and can often be displayed once the data is in the GIS environment, or we also often see it displayed in the CAD environment, but not necessarily as attributes, but as text to depict what's there. So it's really your call as to how you want to deal with it. Confirmation. So in the context of confirming things, what I want to say is that the context is swale pits and swale pipes. The question was, if you recall, which layers do you capture swale pits and swale pipes on? Swale pits are pits, swale pipes are pipes. Please use the pits and pipes layers respectively. You can also put in subsoil pipes in the pipe layer. Just be mindful of that. In terms of codes, and so when you go to section 1.3 in D-Spec, you will see that collection pipes for swales indicates pipes, and pits for swales also indicates pits. So that's section 1.3 will be your best friend when it comes to that. Now, some important things to know about codes for 2019 version and 2023 versions of the specifications. We're aware that there are still organisations that request data to be provided in the 2019 version, and other organisations that provide it for the 2023 version. As a data creator and provider, please don't make the assumption that your client will automatically want the 2023 version. Confirm with them. Now, one of the things that you'll see is that 99% of the time, the codes that are relevant in 2019 will be relevant in 2023. These three instances are typically what you need to be aware of. Now, the bottom one, there are some instances where codes relevant in 2019 and not relevant for 2023. In this example, we're showing the code list for pit lid type for 2019. Now, you'll see all of the different codes there, makes sense. If you are providing data relevant to 2019, then those codes are applicable. However, if you're providing data relevant to 2023 version, then you'll see that those top four codes have been removed, and these two codes, there's been some changes. GA has been increased to GATIC, grill has been included, and LPC has been included. And the main reason for that is that I've shown you an extract of the pit table for 2023, where we've got lid material has been added as an extra attribute. So in the lid type, we don't consider cast iron as a lid type. We don't consider concrete insert as a lid type, etc., etc. So we've removed those and put them into the newly created pit lid material code list. Please be aware of this. And it's quite likely that if you are working from the hard copy plans also, the PDFs, not the hard copy plans, but the PDFs, that they may not also be the most current. The most current and the source of truth is the master spreadsheet, which is posted on the A-SPEC website and can be downloaded. And you can do that very simply, even if you want to do that while you're part of this presentation, you can go to the A-SPEC website in the search box, type in code list, and then go to one of the links and you can download the current code list. That has also been recently updated and will be posted onto the website at the conclusion of these forums. There's different ways to represent rock beaching, and I've shown you here three key examples. We often cover these. We have covered these in previous forums, but I've seen a number of inquiries come into us about how to do this, and typically from people who are just becoming familiar with it. So example one, where we have a head wall, and you'll see some rock beaching there. It won't be captured as rock beaching. There's an attribute called erosion protection where it's like a yes-no feature. Is there erosion protection? Yes, no. That's all there is. And the important thing there is take a photograph. Examples 2 and 3 record details in the attributes. So example 2, which is an OSDS area, you know, a basin or a sump or that kind of thing, it's recorded as the kind of lining material. So the attribute's lining material, the value is populated from the code list. In swales, in example 3, where there may be rock beaching all the way through or other kind of material, then the attribute to populate is drainage liner. The key thing in all of these instances is to take a photograph. You know, a picture tells 1,000 words. It's really critical. And, you know, speaking of photographs, the one thing I notice when we're doing checks on the submissions is that there are very few photographs actually provided. People are putting in the default value. We strongly recommend that you take photographs of these features and you link them. We don't actually want you to link the photograph. What we want you to link is the name of the photograph. You may have in the naming convention the asset type or the asset ID with it, but it's a really valuable tool to use, and we are encouraging our clients, our subscribers to the specs, the councils and water authorities, to request that those photographs are provided to enable that submission to be fully compliant. Now here's representation of a head wall. I wanted to, so we've got our next Menti coming up. So I want you to be prepared for this. So in this particular example, we've got in D-Spec, in figures 25 and 26, we've got an example of how we want the feature to be represented as a polygon. So essentially, if it has this kind of structure, we want it to reflect what the footprint is of that structure. So on the right is a photograph that I took when I was in Wodonga some time back. And in this particular feature, we've got a head wall here. Obviously, there's a pipe coming in underneath a road because there's a safety barrier there. And we've got this little spillway here. We've got these rocks, etc. Now, if we're looking at the footprint of the swale, we're looking at this footprint. So looking at it from above, what would be the extent of that footprint? That's what we're recommending that is provided by the data creator or whoever's doing the field capture. And this way it will provide the asset owner with an indication of what the extent of that feature is. So you'll see the head here with the cogs. That represents that there's a Menti coming up. So what we're going to do is assets to capture details to include, and here's the Menti. So I'm just going to let you briefly look at this second example. What features can you see? Really interested in people spending a little bit of time and having a go at what kind of features you think are there. And For me, looking at this picture again, I've already identified some other features which I've not included in the response, but will do when we get to that slide. So I'll give you a couple of minutes to pipe, head wall. Yep, nice. Great. I like this feature of Menti, Kelly. Yep, great. I'll give you another 30 seconds and then we'll go on. Now, whilst this is going on, I have a supplementary question. Would anybody like to put into the chat or take themselves off mute and give me their view about the difference between a head wall and an end wall? It's a bonus question.
Well, I guess head wall would be the water goes in and the end wall where it comes out.
Yep, it's as simple as that. Thanks, John. Appreciate it. Okay, so look, that's been really great. Thank you, everyone, for participating in this, and I can already see that I've missed a few things. I was just looking at it literally around the head wall, so this is where I got to. Yep, head, end wall, gabion baskets, which is part of A-SPEC. Not so obvious. There's a culvert. There's potentially a swale, a linear swale. There's a safety barrier at the top there that you can see above the swale, and probably a road, which means that there's a road reserve, a surface, a pavement area. So one of the things that we're looking at is, okay, so you may be capturing D-Spec. If this is your only area, that's fine. What everybody's identified has been spot on. If you're looking at it in the bigger picture, then please be aware that there are other things to look at. But thank you again for that contribution. Okay, so here's a request that I dealt with just recently. The surveyor has been doing some work, doing some field pickup of some drainage assets, happen to be also nearby drainage assets as part of the same project of an other authority, a water authority, and the council requested the surveyor to also supply them with that data. Now, you can see my response. Essentially, what we're saying is it's a risk to be providing other authorities' data, even though you're on the same job, to an organisation that, one, does not have an agreement with the other authority, and two, doesn't own the asset. I've seen a situation some time back where a council had a record of all the Melbourne Water assets in their asset management system. They did a data capture exercise and someone captured all the Melbourne Water assets as part of the drainage exercise. The people that did that, the people that requested that had all left. We came in and had a look at the asset data, and there was over 40 kilometres of asset data described as MWC. And And I said to the asset owner at the time, so what's this asset type? They said, look, it's an MWC asset type. I said, what is it? I said, don't really know. That's what was captured by the company that did the data capture. Well, it turns out that they had 40 kilometres of Melbourne Water's assets captured, had been included in their asset management system as their asset, and had been depreciating it for at least a 10-year period. They couldn't work out why they weren't doing any maintenance on it, but they had this depreciation value in there. And it turns out that those assets were valued at over $40 million. So the intention may be honourable in terms of, yeah, look, let's get the asset data. We strongly recommend that an agreement is put in place and it's left up to the asset owner to engage with the other authority for the exchange of data. Stub pipes inside of pits.
Yeah, that's an interesting one, George, because occasionally in some of our projects there'll be, say, a Melbourne water pipe run, or perhaps pits as well running through. It'll only make up a very small proportion of the overall D-Spec total, but that's still included with comments labels that it's Melbourne water. So the council's drainage will feed into that.
Yep. Yeah, look, I think in that particular instance where the outlet or it's passing through a Melbourne water pit, that makes sense to do that and to label it in that regard, but not provide an extensive drainage network that shows a whole lot of Melbourne water assets that have no bearing on the council assets, if that makes sense.
Yeah, George, I'm in the same boat there. This is something we're typically doing. I'm doing it 100% of the time in everything in Melbourne, wherever there's Melbourne water pipe work going through roads or through into wetlands and stuff like that. I'm typically providing all of that with the D-Spec data to council, so it's a complete data set. Otherwise, yeah, I thought council wanted that, and I've always done that actually.
Yep. Look, council do want it, but it's not their data. It's not their asset, right? So, yeah, I totally get that, Jess. So it makes sense, right? However, the caution is that if that council is going to then utilise the data that you give them as the source of truth without verifying it from the asset owner, you know, I've seen approvals to build on blocks of land given out, and someone breaks into the pipe network there, and then the council says, no, it's not our pipe, that's Melbourne Water's pipe, and it creates quite a big legal mess. So the council cannot give advice as to where the other authorities' assets are, but they can request, they can enter into an agreement to get a copy of that data from that other authority, so that they can speak with some conviction around what is actually there. So I would just have that conversation with your council client and say, you know what, this isn't your asset. We shouldn't really be giving you this stuff because we may actually be breaching privacy. They're the kind of things that you want to be considering, Jess.
Yeah, I see what you're saying, but it's not one council, it's councils.
Yes.
I'm typically doing this for all of the Melbourne Growth Area councils, and they're looking at that in comparison to the engineering plans, and they're accepting it. And I think if I left it off, they wouldn't be accepting it, because I'm pretty sure they've asked for for it in the past, and we're doing this all over Melbourne. Perhaps that's advice that needs to come from, maybe it would be better coming from you to the councils, and then the councils could consider that internally, because certainly the engineers are looking at our D-Spec data and approving it. And if they didn't want it, they would ask us to get rid of it.
Yeah. Look, I think this is a topic that we can talk about further offline and maybe approach. I'm happy for you to, in confidence, tell me who you're dealing with, and I'm happy to approach them offline, Jess, and others. I also see Shane, you made that comment, and Rob, you made the comment about, well, what about Melbourne water assets that have been maintained by council? So in that particular case, it's still a Melbourne water asset, so they will be advising where the asset is. So there still needs to be an exchange program. What I see is that there isn't a level of maturity about data exchange agreements, and that's probably something that as a collective we need to advocate for, and that's what I would be doing.
Yeah.
So thanks, Jess, a follow-up.
Okay, all right, maybe I'll shoot you an email about it later.
Sure. Okay. Yep, that'd be great. And we'll look at it in specifics and address that. Okay. All right, here's another. Oh, let me just go back to here. So how do we deal with stub pipes? This is not necessarily a stub pipe. It's often a channel within a pit. So doesn't constitute a pipe. Therefore, there's nothing to record other than, say, provide a photograph. You do not need to provide a pipe in the pipe layer of D-Spec to signify a channel like this within a pit. And we've also got advice in D-Spec about stub pipes and how to deal with them. How do we deal with connecting to existing pipes? So this is really our advice around naming convention. So in this example, we've got EX2. So part A is it's an end of pipe. So what we suggest, maybe for sake of convenience, is rather than call it EX2, to say it's connecting to an existing end of pipe, indicate that there's an end of pipe. So in this case, it becomes MW-01- maybe EP, right? So we go from this scenario to EP2. And that way, the naming convention will be adopted for what is actually existing. Now, on the other side, connecting to existing pits, just to finish off on that, we also recommend that you put a shape similar to this to indicate that there is an end of pipe. And this is partly in, and this is an extract from our code list in D-Spec for pits. Now, when it comes to connecting to existing pits, yep, the way that this has been identified is correct. I wouldn't do anything else. If you wanted to put in a pit there to show that there's a pit there, that's fine. If you just wanted to show a pipe like that goes into a pit, that's also fine. Okay, so just some things to be aware of about the nuance of naming convention. Here's another request that we had to deal with: pipe numbering into and out of a rain garden, as you know, because the rain garden is not a pit structure, and the software that the surveyor was using was forcing the numbering. So you can see here on the right hand side, we've got pit 53 on the left, pit 61A, and yet the numbering of this pipe reflects 61A through to 53, which is not strictly correct. both of these flow into the rain garden. So what we propose and the advice that we gave is that create an EP there, and then you can use that to to address the numbering. So the numbering, you may have noticed, changed from 53-61A to 53_EP53_1-61A. So it follows the naming convention. It will allow you to complete the routine as identified within your software protocols, and also satisfy the D-Spec requirements. In this particular, we covered this last year as well, and there was a good conversation that I saw. So recording of batter slopes in OSDS linear features. The only way that it can currently be addressed is to put details in the comments field, and maybe and this kind of diagram also provided if not previously. So we have a little menti here, which we'd like you to address. So shall we add an additional attribute to cater for the second batter slope? So this is for a swale. Cool. That's yep, great. Keep marching on, folks. So whilst this is happening, Shane, well, I'm just running over a bit, so which is okay, because I'll just shorten the wrap up so that we don't miss out on your experience and sage advice. Thank you, folks. Keep continuing to respond to that, and I'll move on to the next slide. Okay, the area of work extent. Again, we're just recapping. It was critical for 2019 versions because all of the detail about this area works was added to the assets, because the assets, there was no other way to link those assets to the features about the particular project. Whereas in 2023, what we've done is we've added this area works ID. It's no longer essential that the area works boundary fully covers every asset, because we've got this area works ID that is in every table, and that's how we link the projects together of all the assets. As you know, there's common requirements. If you're new to this, please download this particular document. It's the overview document, and it's really important because it outlines some critical things, such as responsibility of the developer and consultant. A key statement here. I'm just looking at the top, the second last point, ensuring the data is supplied within 15 working days of work being completed unless otherwise agreed with the relevant consortium member. I know that there's a lot of pressure on you to deliver work at practical completion, and I know that it's not pragmatic, because you often don't get out on site until practical completion occurs. So really important to have that conversation with the council to enter into an agreement as to when the data will be provided, so that you're not standing between yourself and the developer, or between the developer and their statement of compliance or clearance. Important that I emphasize that there's a conversation to be had. If you can satisfy it, no problem. But don't hesitate to have that conversation. At the same time, for capital works, we indicate up to 15 working days, and this is for the consortium members' responsibility. Again, it's a two-way conversation. It is fair to say that if you don't hear from the council within these timeframes following your submission, then by default, your submission has passed. So from a council perspective, we strongly recommend that you have a conversation to say, look, I'm going to take a little bit longer. Here's where we're at, and enter into that agreement. So whilst there may be an agreement for when the data will be delivered, it stands to reason that can also be an agreement about when it can be reviewed to provide that feedback. Become familiar with this table. Again, this is highlighted more for the new kids on the block, and I say this with love, that we love to have new organisations, new individuals participating in the community. When you open up the A-SPEC overview document, there is a list here that you can become familiar with to find out where the detail is. Saves you having to read through pages and pages of documents, because there are pages. D-Spec is 145 pages. A-SPEC, I think, is 200 odd pages. O-SPEC, 160 odd pages, etc., etc. So this will give you a shortcut. The other thing to do is work out what needs to be captured in the field. This is an example of what I presented last week, and my apologies, I didn't update it for D-Spec, but the same thing applies. Look at what needs to be updated in the field, like, verify the material that's been spent, verify the length, verify invert levels, dimensions, etc., etc. Look at what you can do in the office. Look at what your conditional fields are. So, for example, you may not know what the jointing method is, but between what you get provided from the contractor or consultant and what's on the plans as the jointing method, you can do that as an office exercise. So that will assist you with determining the most efficient process. Certification form, we want this to become a mandatory requirement. The certification form provides a lot of details. I know that when we are asked to review data from councils receiving submissions or from consultants about to put in submission, the majority of them provide a README document, which was basically a text file. We have now created a CSV file that you can download again from the website, and also provide a record of what changes you've seen. Here's a tangible example, right? The number of WCs that were actually built was 4, but in the design it was 3. This will give the person reviewing the data an opportunity to see if the data reflects what's actually out there in the field. Similarly, here's an extract of a handover checklist. We currently have a number of projects that we're implementing A-SPEC and importing A-SPEC. An important aspect of this is to look at how do we incorporate the as constructed requirement into the existing workflows. So we reinforce that here's a checklist, and we advocate that this is a great way to identify exactly what asset data is expected at practical completion. And there's a place for both parties to sign off on this. Right, so the checklist can be found again in the overview document, but there's also a standalone document. From a subdivision development perspective, you could request that as part of the developer's requirement to start completing or start filling in this checklist, and it is maintained throughout up to practical completion and then delivered as part of the material, practical completion material with the ASCON data. And from a capital works perspective, it can actually form part of your project management framework that's initiated by the project owner to identify what assets are there, and then it's maintained through the design process, through the construction process, right through to practical completion. So again, there is a record of what is expected to be delivered. This doesn't tell you the quantities, it will tell you the type. So just a brief Menti to start. Have you used this checklist yet? Very simple. Yes, no. Okay. Thank you. I'll continue on. Keep participating, please. It's great because we use this at the end of every forum season to do a wrap up of what are the results that we see around these kind of questions. So if you're going to be attending more than one session, more than one forum, then you'll see these same questions apply, and some of them are applicable to the forum, others are generic. So here's our tip: inspect versus expecting. So what we're saying there is that this is a checklist that we receive from a client. We often get asked to do some creation of A-SPEC data once the surveying is done, from companies that don't have GIS capability but have surveying capability. So we get them to complete this checklist, and it gives us a strong indication of what they identify. But it also, as you can see, like electrical cabling, they identify S&W spec, electrical equipment, B-spec. So they haven't. So we can see that we need to maybe revise this checklist as well, because this job was done for a building project, and it had some stormwater in it, but mostly the assets were related to building. And so whilst we have electrical lines here, we should probably, to be consistent, we should split this out to be electrical cabling for B-spec rather than people looking for where we put cabling. So there's some work for our end. As you can see on the left side, basins, area work extent, access points, manholes, pits, that will be broken out as well. So it's not grouped up, just to make it easier. You may be aware that we have a number of partnerships in place. This one is with Digital Hive, it's a joint venture partnership that we created pre-COVID. And this is also another joint venture that we created with One Spatial through our Digital Hive entity. And so the focus there is around, as you can see, data validation. Okay. So this is in my lead up to having a conversation with Shane. So Shane, get ready. So I just thought I'd start with a little bit of history. So we're saying 21 years. So A-SPEC turns 21 this year in October. So So this is where it all began, a small project for Wyndham City Council. So Jess, I think I noted that you said that 2010, when Wyndham started requiring it, actually Wyndham was one of the founding councils for creating D-Spec. And in fact, here's our very first version, October 21st, 2004. You may pay note that there's 37 pages there. We really didn't go all out at the start. And we started with 4 organisations. Of those 4, 3 are still A-SPEC members. And this is as complex as it got in the early days. We were really looking at more of a CAD environment, starting to get into the GIS space. And so what we've done is we've gone from a document essentially for data capture of stormwater drainage to 2 documents that to support the industry if there's field recording to be done for existing assets, which is what this existing version spec is, or for new assets, which is the DDS version. So typically the DDS is used predominantly for subdivision developments and for new assets that get built, whereas this one you might be doing a flood study and you want to pick up some detail or verify some detail about your assets. This has information about that and about the typical attributes that are relevant. So just before we kick over to Shane, we'll just ask you to complete this Menti, please. Kelly, did you put 5 stars there? Was that you?
No.
But I know you would.
No, not now. Not that you're asking for 5 stars.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, look, thank you. Look, however it is, look, I know that these presentations, it's whatever you get out of it. So rate it on the value to yourself as much as how I presented it to you. I think that's probably more important to us so that we can see whether we're hitting the mark. So please continue to complete that Menti. Great. Okay, now we're getting to the crux of it. Yeah, cool. And look, and if it didn't hit the mark for you, that's okay. Feel free to put it into a chat or to send me a message privately to discuss whether it was what you were after or not. Okay, that Menti will be up. Okay. Shane, you all set?
Yes. Good morning, George. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning. Good morning. So this fireside chat is really something new that we've created just to make it more of a personable experience and to gauge what the experience has been like for others. So I've invited Shane to speak with me today to do a little bit of reminiscing, Shane, but also talk about your observations of how A-SPEC has evolved from first iterations. So really important that we do that. So welcome.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, I was happy to receive the call last week and been pondering what it used to be like. It feels like forever ago that we first started D-Spec, and 21 years makes me feel old.
Well, yes, but you've still got all your hair and it's dark.
Just. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, no, it's interesting and how it's developed and evolved over time. Had a chat to the team. We've gone from a one man sort of crew to now we have 3 dedicated asset recording teams. So it's certainly boosted our workload over the years. But in terms of the standards and what's required, it's evolved. And I'm a huge advocate for the standards. I think it's been great. Coming from an asset recording background, initially dealing with only water authorities, sewer and water submissions, I've been privy to how the big 3 have sort of deviated from each other in one set of standards, and then you're dealing with Southeast Water, Yarra Valley Water, Greater Western Water, and they all have little nuances and things, and they all follow the same standards but deviate on other things. So I got behind this initially, and full support where this has come from and where it's going, and enjoy dealing with all the councils that are on board, and can really support and help any council that's on the fence. And it's just been interesting how it's evolved. Fieldwork, not so much. So what we're picking up in the field as surveyors really hasn't changed too much. Workload hasn't changed. Still picking out the center of the pits and cover levels and invert levels. It's just how we're presenting the data. I remember George reaching out, and you might be able to comment on what you're after initially, but I think we sent you raw data, some shots and points, and we're basically like, how do you want to present this, George?
Yes, I do. I probably still got that data set because, I hang on to stuff like that. But what I didn't say, Shane, was that Millar Merrigan was actually the first company to provide D-Spec data, and you were the man back then. So
I was behind the scenes. Yes, I wasn't doing the surveying, but
yes.
I was given the task of trying to work out what a mid-MIF file was, the first shape files.
Yeah.
It was an experience.
Cool. And so you said there's been, one of the things that you've observed is that there's been some consistency around what you need to do. But so without giving away sort of any trade secrets, right, what would you say is one of the most important aspects of understanding the A-SPEC requirements and at the same time dealing with council requests?
Well, you need to have a good knowledge of what is required. Initially, it was obviously just D-Spec, so it was easier. There was one manual, as you showed, 35 pages. Now it's a bit more complex, and we're still to this day receive emails saying, oh, we need D and A-SPEC. But I think terminology, if you're after a quote, you just would tell people, oh, I'm after an A-SPEC quote, and we'll look after what that entails. All the new assets on the plan, whether it be D, R, O, or any of the specs. We're no longer sort of just doing one aspect. So council owner requesting D-Spec isn't a thing anymore. They're generally on board with everything, especially in Victoria. I don't know what it's like Australia-wide. But understanding each of the asset classes, know what you're providing, and have those conversations. I can't emphasize enough how much communication with whether it be another consultant, another surveyor, or the water authority or council authority, or Melbourne Water for that fact. You've got to know what you've got to pick up. And it's generally better to understand this before you head out to site.
Yeah, cool. Now, your organisation also has a consulting engineering practice as part of it. How have you noticed any difference between the way that the engineers deal with their documentation to when you first started?
It has evolved. Not a lot. You're still given the issue for construction plans. A lot of the terminology and I guess they're learning what is required and what D-Spec means, and therefore they're providing us that sort of information on the plans, which is great to see. But yeah, essentially we're still, the engineering plans are separate. I think years ago there was mention of having a GIS submission or an A-SPEC submission of the design phase. I don't know where that's at, but that would be interesting.
Well, I'd be happy to trial it with you, Shane.
Yeah.
Yes. It's look, the big gap in the market at the moment is we still get the question, how do we know that what's been designed or what's been built is what's been designed, or vice versa, right?
Vice versa. Yeah.
So whether we have, my personal view is that whether we have the data digitally in the design or not, it still comes down to communication. Someone has to record what change has occurred in the field and whether it's been signed off by the construction supervisor. That's the conversation that we want to explore further and expand on, and that's why in our certification form we're encouraging people to put in what those changes might have been.
Yeah, I think it's a great thing. It's definitely something that needs to be done more of. There's, with the AC/DC portal and the introduction of that checking system, the data is checked that it's correct and that you've used the right codes and things, but there's no way of comparing the design to the as constructed and who has signed off on that change. Our role as a surveyor is probably in the middle, like we are almost considered QA as asset recorders, so we come in and do the checks. So we're used to providing that sort of information to engineers, and with all the modern, all designs are done in CAD now and typically on datum, so there is the ability to have a on datum version of your design, and then you can overlay the as constructed on datum as constructed information, so then you can compare it. That's something we would definitely push for to become a requirement, and we're all for the certification and even potentially looking at licensed surveyors or engineering just to have that integrity behind the data. Like this day and age, and I did think about it like this morning actually, the old GPSs you had to set up on site in the morning, and it was a big clunky machine, and then you would do your survey and then you'd come back and collect the GPS and you had your data point that created datum. This day and age, you're walking around with a GPS on a pole and you've got instant like datum. The issue with this is you need to understand how GPS works and captures that datum, and understand it's not always right. And that's where if councils and that want to focus on integrity of their data and that, they really need to look at how do we get verification basically that a qualified surveyor has done this, and that's not just a rough survey that's close enough is good enough sort of thing.
Yeah, cool. Okay. Shane, I've got another question for you, but I thought that I'd give our participants an opportunity to, if they had a burning question that they wanted to ask, just to put it into the chat or just put their hand up. And so I'm happy to extend this conversation a bit more if you're okay with that.
Yeah, that's fine.
Cool. So whilst so feel free to put your hand up if you've got a question to ask, or put something into the chat and Kelly will bring it to my attention. Now, a little bit of reminiscing, Shane. I don't know if you know, but you worked with one of my former bosses.
Who was that?
Ian Wood.
Oh, there you go. He was my first employer.
Yes. Yeah, he was my supervising drafts person at Board of Works in the sewer renewals area when I was learning about designing sewers.
There you go.
So I just thought I'd bring that up. But aside from that, look, there's been, I'd imagine that because your organisation also has the end-to-end approach, you get the opportunity to do the set out.
Yep.
And then when you're going out, you're then doing a verification survey. How much time has that saved you being able to do that kind of process?
Yeah, well, doing it in-house does help. Certainly when things get buried and things like that. But yeah, we actually predominantly 90% of our work in the asset recording department is external. So
okay,
a lot of other consultants will talk to us. So overall, it probably hasn't helped that much. It doesn't matter if you set it out or not. The time for set out is in preparation and organising the file. But if it's supplied in the correct format and that, you can just go and run with it.
Okay, cool. Yep. All right. So I wonder, haven't seen a hand up or a question yet. So that's all right. What about from your end, Shane? Have you got any questions?
I think with the 2019 and 2023 standards, it was an interesting. I put my hand up, but I took it down again. Would that become a requirement for everyone to accept 2023? I'm coming from the basis of we've changed our systems and updated the codes, and we're keeping up to date. We're doing 2023 submissions. That was a lot of work to prepare for that. So when we get some feedback that councils are still on 2019, it's fine, but we can go and change the codes manually, and it's a little bit of extra work. There's no issue there, but would it be a requirement that the standards, 2019 is phased out?
Look, one of the agreements that we had early on the piece, and I guess I've got the benefit of being through the whole process, and others don't because they come and go, right? The agreement would be that there would be a phase-in period of at least 6 months of when the new version would apply. And the old version would not be supported anymore. It'd still be there so what we have is the timing issue of contracts that get issued and, subdivision development permits that get issued prior to 2023 coming about. I've always been of the view that if the work hasn't been started and it's a couple of years down the track, you're likely to be asked to re-quote on it anyway.
Yes, you generally are. Yep.
Right. So if you're asked to re-quote on it, then you can re-quote on the new version if previously it was the old version. However, it's still at the responsibility of the asset owner, the subscriber, to say which version of the specs that they want. So it's not mandatory at the moment. You raise a good point, and I'll raise it with the community about how to deal with that.
Yeah. Okay. It's just 2019 was a while back now, so it should be phasing out completely by now.
Absolutely. There will be some minor changes that are applied to take into account some of the anomalies that I spoke about earlier, but they're only minor ones. They're not going to be deal breakers as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
But, So, Shane, thank you very much.
No worries. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no, appreciate it, and thanks for your sage advice. And it's been great to have you there as a constant along. And look, and there are others there that I know that are on today that have been that I've been engaging with for many years, and always appreciate your contributions and your support. So So I'm going to move into the wrap up now. So and we'll get everybody to give you a score, Shane. Actually, it won't be you that they'll be scoring. They'll be scoring their experience of the Fireside chat. But yeah, so thank you for that. So the wrap up. We want to crowdsource codes. It's important for us, I think, to give you the ability, empower you to create the codes that you need when you need them. And so the tool that we're creating that will be available on the website, as Zayu said, once we have the permissions sorted under your login, then you'll have access to that. The API is under construction. We are always at the point of continuous improvement. There's a couple of projects that we're doing that we haven't spoken about that will involve Revit links between the 3D world and the asset management world. So as that becomes more apparent and comes out into the public, we'll talk about that. So A-SPEC. Oh, actually, I'll start this Menti. So this is for how many stars for our Fireside chat with Shane. Please jump on and do that. Kelly, if you could probably remove that. Oh no, it's okay. We know what's underneath it. Okay, so much appreciated. Please keep going to the Menti. We'd love to see your contribution, whatever it is. Okay, we talk about A-SPEC. So here's a brief look at the first asset under A-SPEC. And for those of you that don't know, A-SPEC is what we're calling our supplementary spec, our extra spec, and it's for assets that don't normally fall in or fall under any of the other specifications. So in this particular case, we had a request for a fuel tank. So we had fuel covered, we had tanks covered, but not as a combination. So we thought, well, let's talk more broadly about flammable and combustible liquid containers. So A-SPEC will start with this particular asset. And we're looking at the kind of notes that we need to put into there. So we'll refer to any particular Australian standards that are out there, just to make people aware of it. It's a heads up. And you can see that there's quite a bit of detail that is important around that, particularly from a safety perspective. From an attribute perspective, we are now down at the attribute level, and we're in the process of creating our code lists. But there's some quite significant number of attributes that are required. Things like HasChem and etc. Shut off position. So we want to make sure that this represents the level of detail that is to be captured about those particular asset types. And we'll include other asset types as they come up. Two others that come to mind are EV charging stations and solar farms. But right now, our focus is to publish A-SPEC with building with flammable and combustible liquid containers. Okay. Next week, we have A-SPEC. And in A-SPEC, we'll have a guest. A guest next week will be Naomi Patterson, the team leader, Surveying Computing Business Unit of MNG. And incidentally, MNG were the first WA company to deliver A-SPEC compliant data, starting with D-Spec in WA, and I think that goes back to about 2007. I'm not sure. Trevor King, are you on today? Trevor likes to keep a low profile, but I like to bring him into the spotlight every now and then. But Trevor King was essentially like the Shane Sewell, was the Shane Sewell of MNG. So if he's on next week, we'll talk a little bit about that. But Naomi will be doing, it won't be a fireside chat, it'll actually be a presentation, and she'll take us through some of the strategies that her organisation deploys, and it'll be for an interesting presentation. Okay, so we're interested to know if you think this format, what you think of this format. Is it better? Is it excellent? Is it okay? Feel free to put comments in. Yep, great. Thank you for the people that have contributed so far. Again, this goes towards us looking at how we present each year. We try to do something different each year. The slides may look similar, but we like to shake it up a bit. You would have noticed that we have an hour and a half this year. And look, and I apologise, we've just gone 1 minute over. So we'll be finished in 1 more minute. Have one more slide. And this one is, what additional areas would you like discussed in the upcoming forums? And we'll take that into account as well. So feel free to type in what's important to you. Don't worry about whether you think it's minor to you, or if you think it's too big a topic or it's too left field. We're very interested in left field. So we will want to deliver what you want to know about, and the feedback that you provide us guides us on that. So please contribute to that as you can. And essentially, thank you. Thank you to you, Kelly, for Natalie for setting this up, Zayu for being on board in our team, and special thank you to you, Shane, for coming on and having a chat with us and being able to pass on some of the some tips for others who are also considering how to go about doing things.
Great, thanks, George and Shane.
Great. Yep, and Greg, thanks for your comment about how councils are actually using this A-SPEC data. So we'll have a look at that next week and see if we can incorporate it in the remainder of our forums. I'll be here until Q2. If you want to stick around and have a chat, you're welcome. Take yourself off mute, put your camera on if you want to. But thanks again, and look forward to seeing those who are attending next week.